Look at the roll of paper in your bathroom. For every generation of humans before about 150 years ago, that did not exist. And this was a problem every person who ever lived had to solve, every day, for 300,000 years. So they solved it with river water, smooth stones, moss, leaves, sticks, broken pottery. Some of it was genuinely clever. But that is not the surprising part. The Romans built sewers, public toilets, and public baths. Real sanitation infrastructure. And the archaeology suggests it barely helped at all. They may have carried just as many parasites as the people living centuries before them. So let's start with how anyone could possibly know this. Nobody wrote this down. There is no ancient manual for personal hygiene. So archaeologists changed the question. Instead of asking what did they use, they asked what would still be here thousands of years later. And the answer turned out to be something microscopic. Parasite eggs. They are tiny, tough, and they survive in the soil of ancient toilets and drains for millennia. There is an entire field built on this. It's called archaeoparasitology. It can tell you what people ate, where they traveled, and what they were carrying. A latrine, it turns out, is one of the most honest documents a civilization ever leaves behind. So, first, what did they actually use? And the honest answer is that there was never one answer. Because there was never one environment. If you live beside a river, you use water. That's the obvious solution, and it is still used by billions of people today. In dense forest, soft plant material, leaves, moss. In cold regions, snow. In rocky landscapes, smooth stones worn flat by water. At the Viking-era site at York, archaeologists found moss and scraps of wool in the old cesspit layers. Different places, different materials. The same problem solved locally. Nobody invented this once and taught everyone else. It was worked out independently, everywhere. Then civilization arrives and things get more organized. And stranger, in ancient Greece, people used pessoi. Small pieces of broken pottery, worn smooth around the edges, which sounds unpleasant and probably was. But here's the detail almost nobody tells you. Some of these fragments have names inscribed on them. In Athens, citizens voted to exile someone by scratching their name onto a piece of pottery. Those fragments are called ostraca. It's where we get the word ostracize. 10,000 of them have been dug up in Athens alone. And a study in the British Medical Journal raised the possibility that some were reused afterwards, which would mean somebody at some point was quite literally wiping with the name of a man he despised. It is a suggestion, not a proven fact. But it is a very hard image to forget. Then there is Rome, which most people have heard about. Roman public toilets were rows of stone bench seats, with running water in a channel underneath. And you have probably heard about the sponge on a stick, shared and rinsed between users. But I have to flag something here because this gets repeated far too confidently. A number of scholars now think that object may have been a cleaning tool for the toilet itself, not for people. The evidence is thinner than the story suggests. Which brings us to something archaeologists almost never get: direct evidence. At a site in western China called Shuangquanzi, there was a relay station on the Silk Road. An archaeologist found hygiene sticks, bamboo and wood, wrapped in cloth around 2,000 years old. Japan had a similar object called chugi. But the Chinese sticks had something extra on them: parasite eggs, still clinging to the cloth. This isn't a guess about the past. It's an object you can hold. For a subject with almost no surviving evidence, that is extraordinary. And those eggs turned out to tell a much bigger story. Because among them was a species that can only complete its life cycle in wet, marshy conditions. And the nearest place like that was roughly 1,500 kilometers away, which means somebody carried it in their own body the entire way. Researchers Hui Yuan Ye and Piers Mitchell published this in 2016. It is one of the earliest hard proofs that long-distance trade moved disease, and not just goods. Found of all places on a hygiene stick at a desert outpost. And now back to the strange thing I mentioned at the start. Piers Mitchell, at the University of Cambridge, pulled together parasite data from across the Roman world. Rome had sewers, public latrines, bathhouses, laws about removing waste from cities. You would expect parasite rates to fall. They didn't. In some measures, they may even have risen slightly. Compared with the Iron Age populations before them, there was no clear improvement at all. And the likely reasons are almost painfully logical. Rome had sanitation infrastructure. What it did not have was any idea that germs existed. Human waste was collected from cities and spread on farmland as fertilizer, which is efficient and completely sensible, and it sends parasites straight back onto the food. The waste left the city and then quietly returned on a plate. The public baths were warm, communal, and the water was not changed often. If a sponge really was shared in the latrines, that is another route. And a fermented fish sauce called garum was shipped all over the empire, possibly carrying eggs with it. So the infrastructure was real. The comfort was real. The biology simply wasn't understood yet. Which leads to the last myth, and it is the biggest one. Toilet paper was not the moment humanity became clean. It was simply one more solution, added to a very long list. Billions of people today still use water. That isn't older or less modern. It's a second tradition, running in parallel, and it is just as old. Neither one is the correct answer. They are two answers to the same question. And the split between them is mostly a matter of where your grandparents happen to live. So come back to that roll of paper on the wall. The thing that actually changed human health wasn't paper at all. It was germ theory. In the 1800s. Understanding that the thing making you ill is alive and invisible. Before that, humans were extremely good at solving one problem: discomfort, mess, smell, inconvenience. They solved that with whatever the landscape offered everywhere on Earth. But the other problem, the invisible one, had to wait until we could finally see the enemy. For thousands of years, we were clean in the way that feels clean, without being clean in the way that keeps you well. Someone, hundreds of thousands of years ago, looked at an ordinary daily problem and refused to just live with it. The tools kept changing. The instinct behind them never did.